Well, happy Aloha Friday, everyone. And I'm super excited for one of our new guests here. He's the owner and store manager of Westside Comics and Games and longtime fan of both tabletop games and comics. They opened in 2013 over in Kapolei, and then as of 2019 have just changed locations and moved to Aiea. They cater to West Oahu's tabletop game needs, from Magic and Gathering to Warhammer 40K to Dungeons and Dragons and comics. They have everything there. Please welcome our guest, Julius. Now, I don't want to mispronounce your last name. Edano? Did I say that right? Edano?
You got it right.
Okay, perfect. Well, welcome to the Friday Live and happy Aloha Friday.
Happy Aloha. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yes, of course. So you had the store in Kapolei and moved it to a more kind of central location. But let's back it up a little bit. So tell us this origin story. How did you get into this business? This is kind of a unique store and business industry to be in. I'd love to hear the backstory.
Well, the story goes way back to when I was a kid, actually. Growing up as a young lad in Manila, of all places, I began to get interested in American comics at a young age. And when we moved to Hawaii back in 1975, I embraced the hobby with a passion like no other. So I really got into comics, and I really found it very relaxing, very enjoyable. My parents certainly didn't mind because it got me into reading, and it all started there. And then, quite at an early age as well, I think my mom can confirm this, but I believe it was sometime in high school when I told her, Mom, one day I am going to open up my own hobby store. And lo and behold, I think the timing was right. 2013, we went ahead and opened it. It's not just comics, though comics was the first thing that got me in. I did also enjoy a lot of things. I played my first game of Dungeons and Dragons back in 1978. Again, as a young lad in middle school. Back then, you had to hide the fact that you were a Dungeons and Dragons player because it was very non-standard. But
now is it more of a standard thing these days, or trendy to be Dungeons and Dragons?
It's very trendy now, thanks to shows like Stranger Things, where they play D&D on that show quite a lot, and there's a lot of D&D references in that show. And in fact, there's a Dungeons and Dragons movie coming out next year, which starring Chris Pine. They finally got a top name actor to star in a Dungeons and Dragons movie, and so a lot of people are looking forward to that.
So Julius, Attilio has joined us, and I'm sure he's going to have some questions.
Sure.
And thank you for sharing how you had gotten into comics and into the games. So Julius, with the store that you've had since 2013, what industry are you coming from? Like what were you doing before this comic store?
Well, before I opened the comic shop, I was actually in the banking industry. I worked close to 30 years in various different credit unions.
Yeah.
The last of which was Kuakini Medical and Dental Federal Credit Union out in Liliha, and I worked there 10 years as a manager.
Oh wow! And I don't know if you asked this question before, Adrian, but Julius, what made you? What was the epiphany that happened in your life that had you transition from that industry to this one?
I'm not getting any younger, so I've always wanted to do a shop for a very, very long time. And so I think that at the time, the timing of things and opportunities were just kind of lining up just right, and made me decide that was time. Now, one of the other kind of interesting things that also motivated me was, prior to opening the shop, my wife and I gave birth. Well, actually, she gave birth to a lovely, lovely 2-year-old boy. But he's 2 years old when I opened the shop, And one of the things that motivated me to open the shop was I wanted to be able to have a little bit more flexible time that I could spend with him, especially in the early years of his life. So that was also a big motivation right there.
So is your son really into comics and these games as much as you are? Is he following in your footsteps?
He is to a certain degree, but he's not quite as passionate as I was at his age.
And then do you guys have events like what's on the upcoming calendar that maybe our viewers could come and experience?
We do as much as we can to keep events going at the store, just to keep things busy. One of the unfortunate consequences of COVID was we reduced our hours to 10 to 6 daily. One of the effects of that is we don't have nighttime events anymore because obviously our hours have been cut short. But we do try to fill the calendar up. So every Saturday we do have Magic the Gathering tournaments, and those are big for us with a decent amount of turnout. We also do Warhammer 40K tournaments, and there's a big one coming up next month, which is part of a inter-store kind of championship event. So a lot of the game stores on the island and on the outer island are also participating in this. So we'll be doing our share for that. And of course, we also do Dungeons and Dragons, a very popular game. So we dedicate Sunday mornings and Sunday early afternoons to Dungeons and Dragons.
And I wanted to let people know where you're located because for the longest time you were, Adrian and I talked about it, but you were outside here, you were in Kapolei, and then you guys moved to, was it Aiea?
Aiea, yeah. Mm-hmm. Is it a larger location, or just it's better? It's like more centrally located. What was the reason for the move?
The primary reason was the space. We were running into a situation where we had so many people coming in for Magic that I had to move furniture every Friday just to be able to get enough space to accommodate everybody, because the Kapolei shop was rather small. It was just under 800 square feet.
Yeah.
Now, that gets tiring after a while, having to move furniture weekly. So we said, our lease is about to end. Let's go look for a larger space. We tried as best as we could to find something in the Kapolei area, but it was very hard to find the exact combination of things that we were looking for. And the next best thing that we could find was out in Aiea. The central location wasn't a main component of the move, but now that we've moved there, the central location is quite helpful.
Yeah.
You get the townies that don't ever want to come to Kapolei. Well, they'll go to Aiea, but usually, they don't like going past Aiea.
Yes, I find that quite amusing. That we got that a lot when we were in Kapolei. People would tell us like, "Oh, I wanted to come to your tournament, but it's too far. I live in Salt Lake." Wait a minute, Salt Lake? That's like 20 minutes. Yeah,
yeah. Go ahead.
I lived on land for several years, so to me, like a 30-minute drive is not a really big deal. But, I understand it.
Mentality. It's the island mentality. Yeah. People they get used to just having quick drives.
Oh, 30 minutes. That's a long time. Yeah. So, and so you've got and give people a perspective of what they see when you walk into the shop. I mean, I've been into your shop. Like you said, on the weekends you got the gaming going on. But you guys, when I went there, you have, you've got some of the more, I don't know if they call them unique games, but these are the games you're not going to find at like Target or Walmart. Like, for example, like Catan. Talk about the games that you have, because my oldest is 25, and I'm so surprised at how much he's into the Dungeons and Dragons and the board games as a 25-year-old. What kind of games, what makes you decide what kind of games you're going to stock in the store?
Well, and I think you just mentioned it, is, the type of games we like to try to carry are the games that you wouldn't easily find in Target or Walmart or things like that.
Yeah.
We don't carry too many Monopoly games or
Yeah.
backgammon, things like that. But a lot of places do carry Dungeons and Dragons, but it's such a staple that you have to have Dungeons and Dragons. You have to have Magic the Gathering. These are
Yeah.
staple that everyone kind of looks for when they come into shops. Besides those, miniature games are very popular and a
Uh-huh.
very uh, uh, there's a lot of people who play it. So we have to keep it
Yeah.
keep it stocked. Warhammer 40K, our second most popular game in the shop in terms of sales and number of participants. So got to keep that going. One of the things that we do at the shop that's fairly
Yeah.
unique for the island is we do carry a number of historical and military games that you don't. There's not as much of a market for those, and it's a very niche within a niche kind of game. But we do have them, and that's one of the unique things we do want to keep carrying.
Yeah. Well, I
So,
know. Go ahead, Adrian.
so like with the events, I want to get back to that. Can they just show up, or do they need to sign up in advance? Because I know that there's probably a limited space. How does that work?
We do have signups, and we do have sign-up sheets, and you can call or email in to make a reservation. But we do take a lot of walk-ins. We very rarely do our events fill up to maximum capacity. It
Gotcha.
does happen time to time, so we do recommend people to call in or make a reservation ahead of time just to make sure they don't get iced out on the event. We have had occasions where we hit capacity and we have to turn away people. Uh, doesn't happen often, but once in a while it does happen.
Now, you had a chance to meet Stan Lee, and Adrian's like, "Who's Stan Lee?" Unless,
I
well,
know who
more and
that
more,
is, and I
more and more
actually
people
saw
are.
him at the airport. He was on our
Yeah.
airplane that one
Yes.
time.
Really?
Yeah. I was with you on that time, but and he had an assistant with him, but we should have said hello or done a selfie with him. But Stan Lee, the creator of so many different characters in comic books. Tell us about how you met Stan Lee.
Well, it was the amazing Comic Cons did their first convention here in 2016, and they opened it up with a big bang because Stan Lee was their headline act. So I actually got a chance to meet him at the event. It was he, of course, as you can imagine, had a very, very long line.
Yeah.
Uh, it took me hours just to hours of standing in line just to get his signature.
Nice.
But it was definitely worth it. And you only had maybe 30 seconds to talk with him. But even at his age, because at the time I believe he was 93 years old,
Wow.
and yeah, and he was sharp. He was able to like hold conversation, and I don't often get tongue tied in front of celebrities. It's not
Yeah.
something that bothers me. But Stan Lee, I felt like I was standing in front of a god almost.
Yeah. Yeah. What do we have? If people are always wanting, what I want to do is bring the people that don't already know about you into your shop, and talk about the comic collections. Do you buy collections? I know you got them for sale over there, but do you buy collections or help people evaluate them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We do buy comic books. Just about most comic books you can think of, we buy. There's a few things we don't buy, like we don't buy Archie comics, Richie Riches, and things like that. But just
Yeah.
about every superhero comic you can think of, we will pick up.
Gotcha.
We actually also buy used board games, which is something
Oh,
else
wow.
that a lot of people don't do. Yeah, and a lot of people don't know it probably that they can actually sell their board games, but we do buy those, um, and some card games as well.
Yeah.
And we do help with valuation, but we're not a professional grading service. But we
Okay.
are a drop-off site for a professional grading service. CGC Comics in Florida does professional grading, uh, and they encapsulate the comic in a hard plastic shell that's sealed. So it's a great way to preserve your comic. It's also a good way to it's a very respected brand. So a lot of times when that company says the comic is a 9.0, people are not going to argue with you that, oh, it's a 9.0. And so it makes it easier to sell comics, and certainly nicer for your collection when you know it's, that is the grade that it is.
What's I don't want to maybe let the word out, but what's the most expensive comic you got in the shop? Is it in a safe?
At the moment, the most expensive comic book I have in the shop is a comic book called New Mutants number 98. That is the first comic book appearance of Deadpool.
Oh.
And we have the comic CGC graded at 9.8. So that comic goes for $1,900. And that's the most expensive.
$1,900. All right, listen up, all you Deadpool fans. I know the movie's been coming out. And probably most people are like, who's Deadpool? But now they know, because he was a very iconic character in the movies. Totally hilarious. A lot of dark and adult humor.
Yes.
And then who's the character that played him? He's funny. What's his name?
Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah. And so if somebody's out there is like a super fan and they want to get, as you said, the original first time, because a lot of times the character will appear in some other comic book, and then it gains popularity. Then they have their own series. So the number one of that series may not be the first appearance of that character in the comic book world, right?
Absolutely right.
Yeah. If somebody's down at the swap meet looking at all the comic books that might be showing up over there. So you said, which one was it? Something 98?
New Mutants 98. I would be extremely surprised if you could find it at a swap meet nowadays.
So what's the what is the most expensive comic that you have ever sold, since 2013? What's been the biggest sale?
The biggest single sale of a comic book was New Mutants 98. I had two of them.
Oh, wow.
And what did they go for?
$1,900.
Okay. So, and then what's the most, I don't know, I know it's anecdotal and we won't quote you on it, but what's the most money anybody's ever paid for any comic book?
For any comic book, the last I saw, and this may be old now because I haven't checked anything since after COVID, but for the longest time, the record sale was a comic book called Action Comics number 1. That's the first appearance of Superman back in 1938. There was one that was in an 8.0 condition, which would be extremely rare for a comic to be in that good a condition from that time period. And that sold for, I believe, $3.3 million.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Now, I know. Yeah. I think I have a reproduction of it, because I don't know if the one where he's like holding up a car or something like that, but
yes, the one.
I do not have the $3 million version. I got the reproduction one. But so interesting stuff. I think people connect with comic books. For me, it's nostalgia from when I was a kid.
Sure.
And it's funny because I'm reading. My big thing is, so anybody got Conan? I'm looking for 1 through 7, but Conan the Barbarian, not all those other offshoots and this and that, but just the original one. And when I'm reading it, it's so funny reading the ads. Are you tired of having people kick sand in your face at the beach? Sign up for Joe Weider's weightlifting program, and you can, and all this weird stuff in there, selling Grit magazine so you can get prizes. But Adrian, any other last questions for Julius? Because we want people to hear about it and come down to the comic book shop. Even if you're not a gamer, even if you're not a comic book collector, take the family down there. I think it'll be a fun trip.
Yeah, something fun and new and interesting to experience and to learn about.
Support a local business.
Yep, support local. Check out the new location in IAEA.
Yeah,
absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Julius, for joining us, and we'll look forward to the radio show too.
All right, I'm gonna take us out with the video. Go ahead, Julius.
Oh, I was just gonna share one last thing with you guys, and that's one of the things that motivated me to open the store also was the fact that when I was a young child, anytime I got even a little bit of money, I would save it and I would buy comics, I would buy games, I buy Dungeons and Dragons stuff. You know what? It never even crossed my mind to buy drugs because I needed every bit of dollars I could get to buy comics. And if I can do that for any of the other, the younger kids coming up in this generation, hey, you know what? I'll do my share.
Keep kids off drugs, and one of the things, and we
And
should have said.
they do the vaping now too.
Yeah. Well, Howard is one of our team members, and he comes and he plays Warhammer with his son. And what he says, the son is totally into it. But what he said was, what I really appreciated it gets him off the phone.
Yes.
Yes.
Gets him off the phone, and he when he goes play Warhammer with his son, he has this magical thing called eye contact.
Imagine
Good job. Good job bringing back eye contact.
Good job bringing back eye contact, keeping the kids off of drugs. Families, go down there. Go visit Julius over there in Aiea. Go up there, tell him you heard about him on Team Lally. Go pick up that New Mutants 96 from him.
Thanks, Julius.
All right, Julius. I'm going to take us out with a video, so stay with us.